Just as soon as I did that, people showed up there. Welcome everybody to Lunch with the League here on the 9th of June. And with my regular kind of thing that I always say about the League of Women Voters, we don't support or oppose any political party or candidate. We are nonpartisan, but we do have two separate things that we do. And one is we represent unbiased information about elections. I'm sorry, I have to stop to let people in. About elections and voting process and the issues. And we also, after we study an issue, we do take our position to advocate for or against particular policies in the public interest. Today, because of that, comments and opinions of folks who speak aren't necessarily those of the League.
I'm gonna make more, and then if you decided you wanted to have dinner here, you could have this. We'll eat another time.
Excuse what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, if everybody could mute, that's the next thing I was going to say. We will be here from noon till 1. Our general format is will be for our speaker to speak for a half hour, then a Q&A after that, answers a question and answers after that. Please stay muted and put your questions or comments in the chat down below, and we'll get to those when that time comes. And if you want more information about the League, go to lwvsouthbend.org. There's a link there for, excuse me, not only our local league, but also there's a link there for Indiana League of Women Voters and also for the National League of Women Voters. There are a few things that are coming up that they need some help with. We need volunteers yet for Juneteenth, which is at LaSalle Park on Saturday, the 17th. And we need 2 volunteers in the afternoon from 2 to 5. We also had Pride in the Park, but those positions have already been filled. So thank you, whoever is volunteering for that day for Pride. We had really good participation at our annual meeting this year. Lots of new members showed up, as well as, I won't say old members, the rest of us members. However, if there are some of you who would still like to volunteer to do things, to be more involved and active in the League, go to our website and you'll find places there where you can find areas of your interest to volunteer. And now, excuse me, we have our speaker for today, who is going to talk about entrepreneurship and empowerment in South Bend, why ventures created by disadvantaged matter. And our speaker is Dr. Michael Morris. He's a professor of entrepreneurship at Notre Dame's Keough, Mendoza. Oh, well, anyway, school. What is it?
Keough School of Global Affairs.
Thank you. My husband's over there telling me a different thing. Anyway, the entrepreneur programs that Dr. Morris has built in 3 universities have been ranked in the top 10 nationally. Dr. Morris is a pioneer in curricular innovation and experiential learning. His outreach efforts have facilitated development of thousands of ventures. Professor Morris works to bring entrepreneurship empowerment to those operating under conditions of adversity. He's authored 14 books, over 140 scholarly journal articles, past president of the United States Association for Small Business and Entrepreneurship, has been awarded the Academy of Management's dedication to Entrepreneurship Award, and currently is coming to us from South Africa, where he is working on a program there. So I will leave it up to Dr. Mike.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and especially glad we could work this out, given that I'm half a world away from you. But I want to share some thoughts. I want to share some thoughts with you. I'm getting an echo. I'm not sure why. Somebody must have done something. I don't know if somebody has something on or what, but I am getting a terrible feedback suddenly. Hello? Hello? I can't hear anybody. Your microphones are off.
You sound fine to me.
Okay, so can I go ahead?
Try again.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. And I would just like to invite you to, if you have questions as we go, to ask them. If you want to wait till the end, that's fine as well. But what I want to share with you is a program that we have, but to tell a bigger story that I think might be of interest about poverty in South Bend. The program that I'm going to talk about is called the South Bend Entrepreneurship and Adversity Program. I'm assuming you can see the slide.
Yes, we can.
I'm going to take a bold chance here and try to
Make it bigger.
Why is that?
I think up at the top.
Yeah, I'm not. It's blocking me for some reason. There we go. How about that? Are you seeing a big thing now?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll start with a quote, and that is that poverty isn't a characteristic of a person; it's a characteristic of their situation. I think, too often treat poverty and those who suffer from economic difficulty as a stigma, as opposed to a situation, and it's a situation we can do something about. If we look at the numbers, you go back to 1964 when Lyndon Johnson declared the war on poverty, and the poverty rate in the United States was around 13 to 14%. In 2023, it's still around 13 to 14%. So I'm saying it hasn't changed in 60 years in meaningful ways, going slightly up, slightly down. And yet our country spends $1 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion a year on poverty at all levels of government. And so the challenge is, and that money that is being spent is important. It's an important lifeline to people in poverty, but it isn't moving large numbers of people out of poverty. If we look at the numbers a little deeper, places like South Bend have a poverty rate that's close to twice the national average. So that's meaningful. And then if we look at the minority population, and especially African Americans in South Bend and in many cities around the country, poverty can be 3 times the national average. So that's a pretty frightening number amongst African Americans, and a fairly high rate amongst other minorities. As I'm sure you're aware, the gap in our country is getting wider between rich and poor. It gets wider every year. the bottom line is we need alternative approaches to addressing poverty and disadvantage. And what I want to share with you are some thoughts about entrepreneurship as a solution to poverty. That is, people finding their own way out of poverty by creating businesses of their own. I think this is a telling graphic. This is the distribution of income in our country. You know, and I grew up always assuming that there were so many, it was kind of like a big hump, normal distribution with so many smaller number of people poor, smaller number of people rich, and this big middle class. This graphic makes it clear the skew in income in our country has been in the direction of a skew towards the lower end. And so it's not just that we have a sizable number of people, over 40 million people, by the way, who are in poverty in our country, but as a function of what it actually costs to live in America, the people who are near poverty are meaningfully below the median income is growing. So it's a serious problem. We think about poverty, the mistake we make is we assume that poverty is about a lack of income. And it's doing something about poverty requires that we understand it's a multidimensional notion. There's more people in poverty also, apart from the lack of income, tend to be underemployed or unemployed. They face substandard housing and the threat of eviction. They face food scarcity. They have disproportionately higher amounts of chronic health challenges. Their high school dropout rates are higher than the norm. They deal with physical insecurity due to crime and gang activity, high rates of teen pregnancy, constant fatigue, significant stress. From an entrepreneurship standpoint, few or no entrepreneurial role models, limited social networks, doors closed, lack of access. So what I'm trying to say is it's more than just a lack of income. It's more complicated than that. So what do all these things mean when you try to start a business? When you have this set of factors working against you? In our work, we've been able to show that all of this translates into 4 unique difficulties, which we call the liabilities of poorness, when you try to start a business. First, the poor have literacy gaps. And I'm not just talking about reading and writing and numeracy. I'm talking about gaps in terms of financial literacy, technological literacy, economic literacy, business literacy. They also suffer from, and this is a very important idea, from something called a scarcity mindset. Think about a person who lives in a world where every week they have to make decisions between paying a doctor's bill and paying the rent. It forces a very short-term mindset where every decision is a trade-off, usually a suboptimal trade-off, where I'm having to make decisions that cost me more in the long haul than they should. So that scarcity mindset creates an immediacy. It's very hard to plan ahead. If you go to a small business development center and say, I want to start a business, they say, well, write a 5-year business plan. How can I think 5 years ahead when I'm living in the moment? Intense non-business pressures, which makes it difficult to focus. I'm operating in the business, but I can't think strategically because I am distracted by having to take care of an aunt who's just moved in who has a chronic illness, or my kid's in some trouble at school, or I've been mugged, or my car's broken down, or a thousand other unexpected death. And then lack of any safety net. So they're running a business, but at the margin and incredibly vulnerable. I see I have a little typo there. So what does all this mean? If I have all this working against me, and I'm in poverty, and I'm trying to start a business, I'm in disadvantage, it limits the kind of opportunities I can see. It affects the kind of ventures I start. It limits the time I have to spend on the venture. It constrains my ability to access local, what are called entrepreneurial ecosystems, sources of support that might exist in the community. Hard to plan. The kind of market I'm able to, kind of customers I'm able to get are more limited. The kind of resources I can deploy and the kind of returns I'm able to generate. So that leads to our program. So with the nature of poverty and the unique obstacles, these liabilities that the poor have to overcome, all entrepreneurs have to overcome obstacles, but these are extra ones. We've launched the South Bend Entrepreneurship and Adversity Program. It's an annual program. It's 10.5 months long each year. It's based out of University of Notre Dame. And it has 6 components to it, and it unfolds over 10.5 months. 6 weeks of training, and then about 4 months of mentoring from successful entrepreneurs in the community, and then consulting from students. So students create websites and social media campaigns and bookkeeping systems for these entrepreneurs. Something we call Community Connect. So twice a year, we have public events to bring the South Bend community together with these entrepreneurs to support them, to support their businesses. Something called a Pathway to Microcredit, trying to help some of these ventures that are ready to take on debt qualify for small micro loans. And then we have a system to track these ventures for 3 years on 35 different variables. So the whole idea is, how do we leverage resources across the Notre Dame campus and resources across the South Bend community to support disadvantaged entrepreneurs and help them find their own way out of poverty? The program, and so when I say across the campus, that's us running the program, but how do we tap computer science? How do we tap the art school and art students to create logos for these entrepreneurs? Or, so partnering across the campus, even with things like campus procurement. So working with the procurement office on campus, some of our entrepreneurs have gotten contracts and they're actually selling their products or services on the campus. The program has 15 partners in the community that we work with. And the whole idea, and this is the key given what I just said about poverty, the whole idea is we want to walk this journey with the entrepreneurs, at least part of it. And so we've broken the entrepreneurial journey down, the journey from an idea for a business to a sustainable business, a business that can improve your economic circumstances. We've broken it down into 80 steps, 80 steps. And the whole idea is step at a time, step at a time, step at a time. Progress begets progress. If we can help the entrepreneur with a bookkeeping system or with a website, they'll take 5 more steps on their own. And critically, we're not in the judging business. We struggle with this sometimes with our mentors. They go, well, it's just a bad idea. That's not our approach. Our approach is we're going to find a way to make whatever profit can be made from the thing you want to start. So we want to reinforce people's dreams, and there's a ton of them. I'll show you some numbers in a minute, but we're helping 70 low-income people a year. And you'd think after a year or two, we'd sort of run out of people. It just keeps growing. So we have a waiting list of folks for next year that fills our capacity. So I'll talk more about that. But what are we developing? Both the person and their business. And so how do we help the individual develop the entrepreneurial mindset? How do we help them develop core competencies in terms of how to more creatively utilize resources and how to evaluate opportunities, building up their self-confidence, their self-efficacy that they can do this, bringing both focus and discipline to their approach. Meanwhile, trying to help the business in a whole lot of different areas, from operations to bookkeeping to marketing. So this is a busy slide, and I apologize, but all it's trying to say is, the interesting question, because when you hear the word entrepreneurship, you probably think about Facebook or Amazon or some high growth, scalable, technology-centric company. Entrepreneurs actually create 4 kinds of ventures, what we call survival, lifestyle, managed growth, and aggressive growth. Survival business is like a guy on the corner with a hot dog stand, or a handyman who comes around to your house and fixes things. They make enough money this week to pay this week's bills, not much more. Lifestyle business is like a corner restaurant, a shoe repair shop, a hardware store, a bar, shop, a women's dress shop. It generates a decent, stable, steady income, and one can reinvest in the business. A managed growth business is like somebody who starts a real estate firm in South Bend and 10 years later has 15 locations all over North Central Indiana. And the aggressive growth are the stars, the Amazons, the Twitters, and these companies that make people billionaires. While everybody focuses on those glamorous ones, they represent less than 1% of startups. But the key thing is, most businesses that are started in our country, 85% of businesses started in our country, are survival and lifestyle kind of businesses. With the poor, it's about 98% are survival and lifestyle businesses. So I'm trying to get you to focus on the kind of businesses that are being created. So these are businesses that fall into what we call the commodity trap. So think about somebody who starts a cleaning business in South Bend, right? They struggle to distinguish or differentiate their cleaning business from the other 200 cleaning businesses in South Bend. They tend to price too low. These tend to be labor-intensive businesses. They can't afford equipment and can't afford or don't understand technology. And so their capacity is constrained. So they can't produce very many units. Think about somebody who makes baby bibs. And putting all their labor into it 5 days a week, they can make 30 baby bibs in a week. The capacity is constrained. So what happens is they become low volume businesses with low margins. They buy at retail to sell at retail. They have no bargaining power. And the upshot is they struggle to make a profit. And our program is about how to break out of this commodity trap and build a business that can be sustainable. So the businesses that we work with, as I said, we work with 70 of them a year, are online fashion stores, lawn care, hair salons, candle makers, caterers, event management companies, screen printing. I mentioned a lady that makes bibs, people who make skin lotions, shea butter lotions, microblading, a woman who makes nice chocolates, downtown trolley that just opened up. And so senior care, and that these are important businesses. We tend to denigrate them or think of them as not important, but they are the backbone of local communities. That they fill niches that larger companies or established companies don't serve. They're much more embedded in their neighborhoods and their community. They're not the kind of companies that when they start to grow, they move to Indianapolis or they move to Austin, Texas. What inspires me is the extent to which these entrepreneurs overwhelmingly, when you go, what's your motive? Why are you starting this business? It isn't about wealth. It's an ethic of making my community better. It's an ethic of giving back to my neighborhood. And so they bring stability to neighborhoods. When you get enough of them starting in a neighborhood, crime goes down. They hire workers, they pay taxes. So what have we done so far in these first 4 years? We started this program in 2019. We've served 300 disadvantaged entrepreneurs. 95% are people of color, 70% are women. Their ages range from 20 to 68 years old. They include 3 kinds of businesses: people at the idea stage, so they haven't started yet; people with a product or service that they may be selling at the farmer's market or at a pop-up store or wherever, but they don't have a business. They have a product or service. They make candles and they're selling candles, but they don't have a business. And then people who've started a business, but they're struggling to get traction. 122 mentors, people from the community, have worked with us supporting these entrepreneurs. We've gotten over 200 students involved, mostly from Notre Dame, but we have some high school students at Riley High School that do social media campaigns for these entrepreneurs. We've had a few kids from St. Mary's. We've launched a co-marketing initiative. So we created a website where people in the community can go and find these businesses and do business with them. And we're tracking 290 entrepreneurs because there's no data. State of Indiana, the city of South Bend have no data on how many poor people started a business last year in this state. So what's exciting is our model works. And so we've expanded to 31 cities across the country, and now a number of international cities who are playing from the same playbook. So they're using our program, using our toolkit, using our kind of approach, and we continue to innovate. So we've built a support structure to support these 31 other cities, as well as the South Bend program. I mentioned the co-marketing initiative. We got Coca-Cola to bet on our program, and they're allowing us to give micro grants, $2,000 grants, no strings attached, to these entrepreneurs if they complete 25 of our steps. One of our partner cities has translated the whole program into Spanish. We have a program at Notre Dame called the Inspired Leadership Initiative, where people come back and spend, after they've had a career, and spend a year at Notre Dame to figure out what they want to do next. And one of those people was heavily involved in our program, and then he had a stroke and died in the middle of the school year. And everybody who knew him put money in. And so we now give a Mike Boyce Award in every one of the 31 cities to the outstanding entrepreneur. We're doing a Christmas fair now in December where all these entrepreneurs sell their products and services, and a lot of other cool stuff. And I want to finish with a quote. This is a quote from one of the women in our program who actually has done quite well. "Just a year ago, me and my daughter was sleeping in my car in hotels for a month. I knew I had to do something I was never taught, and that was how to live. Thank you for this opportunity. It's such a blessing to me." So that's our program. And it also gives you a little snapshot of the significant poverty challenge in the city of South Bend. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think I did that in 30 minutes too, so.
Would you like folks to just call out their questions, or would you like
Yeah,
it
that'd
to
be,
be in the chat?
it'd be fine if you just speak right up.
Okay, I have one. How does someone, is there a criteria that they have to meet in order to get involved in this, to be a recipient of this program? And how do folks get involved?
Yeah, so they simply need to be in adverse circumstances. So that principally tends to be people in poverty. It includes refugees. We have a number of them moving into the community. It includes women in women's shelters. It includes some formerly incarcerated people. So as long as you're in circumstances that indicate disadvantage, you're eligible.
How about somebody that's undocumented?
Not that they would be fine. They would be eligible.
Okay. Questions, folks? I've never known this group to not ask questions.
I have a question. I'm just wondering how a person would find out about you and hook up with you.
Yeah, that's a very important question. So I get asked, well, how do you get these people? How do you find these people? And it's kind of an interesting story. And if I go off too far on a tangent, you let me know. But when I came to South Bend, I knew nobody here, and I knew hardly anybody at the university. But I asked around, and the key to a program like this is you have to go out and meet people in the community and meet people who are respected in the community, not necessarily the loudest voices in the community, but the ones who are most respected. And so I spent some time doing that. And it's different people in the African-American community, in the Hispanic community. And so we built this network of what I call gatekeepers, who are influential. And so that included the refugee community. It included the formerly incarcerated community. So I spent a fair amount of time making connections with those folks. And you might be surprised to hear this, but if you assume Notre Dame has credibility in those communities, that's a big assumption. So when I'd go, well, we're going to do this, it's going to be great, it's going to help people in your community, they're like, who are you? And I said, well, I'm from Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame never done anything for me. My cousin works in the dining hall over there, but that's about it. I've never been to a football game. So I had to make a commitment, and the commitment I made was, here's the deal. Because that's a community that has been ignored. People come, they get the photo taken, and then they disappear, so they're not around 6 months later. So I said to the folks, look, we commit to 500 new ventures in South Bend, started by people in your community over the next 6-7 years, as a message to say, we're going to be here. This program's not going away. And so they took a chance on us. And so the answer to your question, Melanie, I know it's a long answer, I apologize, but the answer is, when we market the program each year, we put posters up downtown and at the library and at barbecue shops and, places people go. But those gatekeepers probably generated disproportionately most of the early people that came to the program. And we had 70, we were going to accept 50, we accepted 70 in the first group. We've accepted 70 every year since then. Now, when we start the marketing in November, the program runs from early February through December each year. When we start the marketing, it's full in 2 or 3 days. And so we're getting a lot from the people who've been through the program, who then refer other people to the program. But folks can just get a hold of us, get a hold of me at the university. The application is super simple. It's about 6 short questions. Everything is designed to meet people where they are. In fact, we don't do any of this program on the Notre Dame campus. It's all done in the community. When we do the training, it's down at the Charles Martin Youth Center. When we do the mentoring, it's done in the community.
Dr. Morris, you mentioned training as the first of the 6 components. What does the training consist of?
So the challenge there is to get the group, so the 70 people who come in, to get them on the same page. And so we have people who are at the idea stage, people who have started a business, but they struggle to get traction, people with a product or service, but no business. So the 6 weeks of training is broken down into modules that address the basics of, it starts with the basics of the entrepreneurial journey, and then we dig into what you need to know about the numbers, what you need to know about your customers and the marketing, what you need to know about resources and how to cleverly get resources when you don't have any resources, operations of the business. So there are modules around these different components of a startup, of a new business. Each week they're exposed to content, and then they hear from entrepreneurs who themselves come from disadvantage, sharing their insights on what we just talked about. And then they get to hear from what we call subject matter experts. So we might have a panel of lawyers or a panel of bankers or social media experts or whatever. So it's a fairly comprehensive introduction to entrepreneurship.
How do you help somebody with the self-esteem component? I know somebody who can't even get started because she doesn't think her work is good enough to sell.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Part of it is, Judy, is the we have, our approach is all about the positive. The world of entrepreneurship is all about killing ideas. Here's what's wrong with your idea. That's why it won't work. That's a dumb idea. Ours is all about, I can look at an idea and say, this is pretty weak, but I don't say that. Our whole focus is, all right, we're not going to kill your idea. We're going to show you what's good about it and how it can work. And maybe you can't make a lot of money, but you can make some money. And what we find is, as you do that, you start to see, I better adapt this in this way, or maybe I need to add some other products, or maybe I need to look at some other markets. But I'll tell you the biggest thing, it's the cohort. So when we're in the room for the training, it's magic, because the extent to which people see other people like them who are struggling just the same, who come from the same adverse circumstances, and the extent to which they reinforce one another. And that's where you start to see that, well, I guess I could do this. He's doing it, she's doing it. And so a lot of it is that element. Another piece is, this is not a one-off program. It's a 10.5-month program. And so we're with you for a while. And we're showing you steps, one step at a time. Open a business bank account, get an employer identification number, And so I think it's a combination of those things where people start to believe in themselves more.
There's a question that's, excuse me, in the chat. What is the percent of people who participated that are now out of poverty?
Yeah. I can't speak to specifically out of poverty, but I can speak to the percentage of people who have improved their economic circumstances. And that tends to be about 30% of the group. And in the world of entrepreneurship, that's a good number.
Okay, and another one that is in the chat, there are several comments, but another one is, this is a great program. Thank you. Adversity is part of the title of your program, and I can see that your entrepreneurs are facing significant adversity. You mentioned that Indiana does not track how many businesses are started or continued. Is your program tracking your entrepreneurs, and how is this model being replicated elsewhere?
Yeah. So what I said was not that Indiana doesn't know how many businesses are started. They do have a rough a number. I'm not sure it's an exact, precisely correct number, but they do have a number. What Indiana does not track, California does not track, Florida does not track. States do not track how many businesses are started by people from poverty and disadvantaged circumstances. They have no numbers. So if you said, Mike, what's the success rate of businesses started by poor people in America? Nobody has a clue, because there's just no data. And one of the reasons is a lot of these business, well, first, one of the reasons is when you start a business and you register the business, there's no box that you check that says I'm poor. So they have no way to track that that business was started by somebody. And the other problem is many of these businesses operate for some time in what we call the informal sector. They're selling a product and making revenue, but it's not a registered business, and so it's not in any database. So that was the first part of the question. There was more to it, I think.
Where is it replicated? I think that was the other part.
We've replicated it in 30 other cities. So the 31 cities that are all doing this. It's replicated because we've documented everything we do. We have a playbook, which is a 66-page document on how all the pieces work. We have a website that's packed with resources, videos on how the training is done, videos to help the mentors. So a whole toolkit that is tailored to people from disadvantage. How can we find out what the other 29 cities are? I can answer that one quickly. If I go back to my screen, sorry here, I'm gonna.
Oh, and what's the website too? That's
so I'm back in here, and it's on these are the cities. I think I got them all in there. I was making some touches on this right before I got on, but Milwaukee, Cleveland, Camden, New Jersey, Bakersfield, California,
all over.
Louisiana, two different cities, Alabama, Ohio. So yeah, I'm gonna.
When you say we will be with you, who is the we? Are most of them volunteers? Are they paid staff, or how? Yeah, who are the we?
It's kind of the royal we. It's me, and I've hired a program manager at Notre Dame, and that's the team. We have some graduate assistants as well. But what's happened is we've added these cities, is the partners are partners. And so they help one another. So, when the program was started down in Auburn, Alabama, and that's a bit more rural, that partner was able to talk to our partner at Ohio University, which is in the Appalachia part of Ohio, and get some insights on nuances when you're dealing with a more rural kind of area. So that's also the we, this
Okay.
group of partners.
There are, could you please put your website in the chat for people? Somebody is asking for the website.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to try to remember if you, I just don't have it handy. I'm sorry, and I'm in
Okay.
South Africa. But if you just type in South, I'm going to type it Ben Entrepreneurship and Adversity Program, and the words Notre Dame, you should get to the site.
And can people join through that site?
What
I think
kind of people?
join means, can they sign up for the program? I think that's what they meant.
If people want to,
Marla.
if you go to that page for South Bend Entrepreneurship and Adversity Program, Notre Dame, and you start to scroll down right in the middle of the page, it'll say apply here.
There.
You just click on
Yeah.
that and it takes you. What I want to stress about the use of the word adversity, the reason we use that word, we do not use the word poverty. We use the word adversity because that's the more, first of all, we're trying to remove the stigma. And secondly, disadvantage takes a lot of different forms, and positioning it around for people in difficult circumstances, for people who are facing unique adversity, I just think that resonates more with people.
Right. There's some more questions on here. One is the $2,000 Coca-Cola grant program sustainable?
Yeah, it's no. We have to keep scrambling to find more sources of money for it. It's, one of the things about Notre Dame that I'm not sure people just assume, well, they charge such high tuition, they must be rich as can be over there. But the reality is we 80+% of our students are on financial aid, and the university has huge amounts of scholarship money and so forth. And so the university actually doesn't have money to pay for programs like this. I mean, they pay for my salary, but I teach and do research as well as this program. And so we have to get out and scramble and try to raise resources. That's why we went after the Coca-Cola Foundation. And we continue, it's an ongoing struggle. So that's a long answer, but it's sustainable if we can find more Coca-Cola foundations out there who believe in what we're trying to do.
Right.
Related to that, you mentioned microloans. How big is a microloan? How small? What's the range? And what are the sources that people can tap? Are there any local funds?
It's a tough one. It's a real tough one. We're talking about loans that usually range, that people use different definitions of microloans. They usually go higher than us. I mean, it's under 100,000. Financial community would think. We think of loans between 10 and 50,000 as a micro loan. It'll buy a piece of equipment for you to mix your chocolate or for you to run your screen printing press. South Bend is a challenge, and even some of our financial institutions, and I won't name any, but we've had some not great experiences, are quite conservative when it comes to the bar you got to meet in terms of getting a loan from them. And that we've had entrepreneurs who, they had a year and a half of profits. And yeah, but you don't have 2 years of profits, and that's our bar, and or 3 years. And so it's a tough thing in South Bend. It's a tough thing in general, but especially businesses that are early stage. Financial institutions are set up to fund businesses that have been running for 3 years and have a stable, steady cash flow and a consistent level of profitability, and are making enough money that it's demonstrable that you can pay the loan off. And that's not these businesses. So they don't qualify for debt. They certainly don't get any equity investment. And South Bend does not have, surprisingly, what are called a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. We now have at least an office operation in town called CDFI Friendly South Bend that will refer folks to CDFIs in Fort Wayne or Chicago or Indianapolis. But it's a problem in South Bend.
Okay, now we got a bunch of questions that are online, and I'd like to go through some of those before anybody else chimes in. Every business needs customers. How can we support these businesses?
Well, that I guess 2 key ways. One, we've actually created a co-marketing site where all the businesses that are in our program that are to the point where they're selling a product or service, we list them on the site. And so it's just for South Bend residents to go to. And so whether it's hair care or lawn care or, personal care products or transportation, they're organized by category. And I think let me try to quickly, I don't want to waste your time, but let me try to quickly get you that link. I think it's support SB entrepreneurs. Try to see if I can find the link. Not finding it. There it is. I found it. Okay. I'm going to put this in the chat, but it's
Good,
it's a website we've created to where's the chat? Oh, here it is. I'm trying to find where I can post
Chat's
here. On
Chat's at the bottom.
I'm looking at it. I'm just not seeing where I can add a
Bottom
comment.
left.
Click on it. Yeah.
Let's see. How about if I just respond to somebody in the. Okay, I'm going to do it.
There.
Oh, I see. That was the first one. I never hit send. So that was but here's the link to the, did that just come through? Support
One just
SB entrepreneurs. Yeah, that's it. So if you'd like, that's not about the program. It's about the businesses and how you could do business with them.
Okay. Now there are a bunch of other questions. I'm going to run through them. Are there any analysis done to take data from INBIZ and compare business addresses to disadvantaged/high poverty census blocks to estimate business success for those disadvantaged geographies?
I'm trying to read the question. Where is it?
Allison Heinsberg.
I just lost you somehow. I don't know what I just did, but Could you just repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Okay, are there any analysis done to take data from INBIZ and compare business addresses to disadvantaged/high poverty census blocks to estimate business success for those disadvantaged geographies?
I'm not familiar with any. The challenge is to identify the businesses in those census tracts that are owned by people who qualify as low income or disadvantaged. We have been publishing some research based on data from the program.
Okay.
But we have to generate that data. There aren't really secondary sources that you could use. But the question is a very interesting one, because we can, with time, with the database, so we're tracking these businesses on 35 variables for 3 years. And so we could take the zip codes for the addresses we have for the businesses and compare it to some of the data that you're talking about in terms of secondary data on those census tracts, and probably draw some kind of conclusion.
Okay. Next question from Melanie. How do we explain that South Bend has a poverty rate twice the national average and the rates for African Americans are 3 times? And
Yeah.
what can the city do to improve the situation that they're not doing now?
Yeah. I don't know that I want to get too much into the city and what it's doing. It is trying some things. It is trying, it's got a couple programs that have been put in place, and I laud the city for what it's trying to do. It's got something called a business suite, where it's kind of like giving vouchers to small businesses to buy services like accounting or logo preparation or whatever. So the city is trying. The challenge here is, many of you know far better than I the economic history of South Bend and the slow transition all the way back to when Studebaker went out of business from a manufacturing-based center to some other kind of economic structure. So I think some of it is that number 3 times the national average is typical in cities across the country. It's not just South Bend. In fact, much of what I've described about South Bend, there are dozens of other cities with equal or worse numbers. So I don't think it's specific to South Bend, although the history of South Bend is a unique history that has contributed. And downtown is a good example. If we had one of our entrepreneurs open a store downtown as a virtual reality store, but people don't shop downtown very much. They go downtown to a restaurant or to go to the symphony or to go to a government office, but they don't do a lot of, or they go to that chocolate factory, as you said, or the ball game, but they don't buy a lot of goods downtown. And I think the city's also trying to do some things to reinvigorate the commerce that is in the town, that you don't just go to Mishawaka to go to the store or whatever. But I think South Bend is making progress. It's so the numbers I'm citing are not out of, they're unacceptable numbers, but those numbers exist in a lot of urban areas, and especially in cities and in the Midwest and in the North, the Rust Belt, and all those challenges.
Yeah, now we've hit 1 o'clock, but we still have a few more questions, and I'm going to run through them. And if folks need to leave, they can. And Mike, if you can you stay on for a few more minutes to answer these questions?
A few more minutes. I'll have to double my fee.
Okay. We'll give you 3 times your fee. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're getting down near the end, but how wide is your geographical range? And does that include all of Michiana?
For the South Bend program. It includes all of Michiana. We accept people to the program. We've had folks drive as much as an hour. That's rare. But it certainly is Michiana. We get a few people from Elkhart. We certainly get a number from Michiana, from Mishawaka, down to Plymouth. So that's how I'd characterize it.
Okay, the rest of them are just comments that you can just read
Okay.
if you'd like. And there is your link.
Yeah, let
And-
me give you my email as well. If people
Oh,
have
okay.
follow-up questions, I'm
Okay.
not going to be back until the 3rd of July from South Africa, but please don't hesitate to follow up with me. And if you know, it's a struggle with our mentors because South Bend isn't that big. These are people who've started businesses and been successful. But if you know mentors who might join the program and mentor one of these entrepreneurs, it's not a heavy lift. Please send them our way.
Okay.
But there's my email.
Dr. Mike Morris, thank you so very much for being here today. This has been wonderful. It's just been a delight. And does anybody else have any really quick question?
Well, let me
Silence.
thank you as well. The work you do as the League of Women Voters is so important. And I'm not sure you get thanked very much, but I certainly thank you. And it's an honor to be able to spend time with you.
Thank you so much. And try to enjoy South Africa along with all the work that you do.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.